welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today, we're going to talk about that weird, lonely feeling when it seems like everybody else has moved on, but you're still knee-deep in grief, trying to remember what day it is, and if you've even eaten this week. So we're talking about that icky feeling when the world moves on and you're still grieving. We'll get into that here in just a moment. But before we do, I wanted to let all of you know that on May 1st and May 15th at 7 p.m., I will be hosting a free caregiver peer support group live on Zoom. So I just want to bring that out to all my listeners. I will be hosting these ongoing, but for the month of May, I'm going to allow any of my listeners to come in who might be a caregiver of any sort, whether you're caregiving for an elderly parent or a spouse with cognitive decline and or terminal illness, or a friend, a neighbor, an aunt, uncle, doesn't matter. If you're caring for anybody, and it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody at end of life, this can be caregiving for people with chronic illness, addiction, and any other type of situation where you might need to be a caregiver, because being a caregiver is incredibly isolating. It's stressful, it's tiring, it's a lot. It can also be a beautiful and fulfilling time. So I want to just make sure that I get all of you together so that you can help support each other in a safe environment, because a lot of icky feelings come along with being a caregiver sometimes, and it's hard to talk about those to people who just don't get it. If that is something you would be interested in, please come on over to my Caregivers United virtual space, and the link will be in my link tree in the description. So just a click away, you can get to the Caregivers United, and over on the left-hand side, you'll see events, and just click on that, and you can get the registration information so you can join my Caregivers Peer Support Group. All right. So with that out of the way, let's get into today's episode. Let's talk about this. So I know this is something I personally have felt, but perhaps you have too. So there comes a time after a significant loss when the casserole stops showing up, and it kind of feels like everybody else around you has, quote unquote, moved on, but you're still struggling. It feels like everything's just back to normal and you're still kind of in the thick of it, and it's that feeling when you're on Facebook and everybody's posting pictures of their brunch or planning wedding showers and complaining about their job, and you're just trying to remember if you've brushed your teeth today. That feeling can be very isolating and very real and very brutal. But here's the interesting part. Even though you feel isolated, even though you feel like you're completely alone now, you're not. You're definitely not alone. So many people have felt this too, including myself. So let's kind of start this off by talking about the biggest myth out there that I know I've busted and mentioned several times on this podcast, that grief has a timeline, right? There's some magical invisible stopwatch, and it starts right as you suffer a significant loss, and then that stopwatch will go off and ding ding, you're over it, you're all better. And for everybody, that might feel like a different amount of time that you feel should be the time that you're quote unquote over it, like a week, a month, 6 months, a year. Well, as you know, if you've been listening to this show for any length of time, that's bullcrap, and you never get over your grief. It's with you forever. And again, it's not always a bad thing. So, and also, I hate to spoil this for you, but there's no trophy for fastest recovery from soul-crushing loss. There's not. If there was, I'd probably have one. A lot of us would. But there's no prize at the end of this, y'all. You're never going to go back to the way you were. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. There is a huge amount of support directly after a loss. Like I said, that's when people are bringing casseroles over. They're offering to mow your lawn. They're sending text messages. Hey, I'm just thinking about you, man. Are you doing okay today? Do you want to talk about it? And after a while, that crowd starts to thin down. People stop sending those text messages. People stop giving you that, that look when you see somebody in public after they know you've had a significant loss, they have that look like, oh, oh, honey, you okay? They have that look on their face. Those stop happening. And it just feels like, okay, everybody's back to normal. Why am I still hurting? And somehow those moments when you realize the world's not thinking about your grief anymore, it just makes it feel even worse, because now you're not suffering with people, you're suffering alone. And that's when that myth kind of creeps in. You start questioning yourself. And I did this too. Why am I not okay? Shouldn't I be okay by now? That's not how this works. Grief is not a linear journey. There's no schedule for this. There's no correct path. You're going to be wandering through this landscape. It's like a really crappy escape room, and you have no map, no snacks, no water, no cell phone, and no directions on what you're supposed to do to get out of this escape room. Ugh, I hate escape rooms. I'm not good at those. Anyway, so that's when things start to feel the trickiest, because one of the hardest things is when your grief starts becoming invisible. When your grief is new, people see it. They can see it on your face. They can see it in your body. You might cry. You might break down. You might, talk about it more and just everything about it. So people are like, oh, this must be so hard. You just lost so-and-so. And you're not wearing that grief as much. It's still there, but you're not wearing it. And then you've fed into this by that whole, why am I not over it by now? Shouldn't I be over it by now? So you're masking more. And people assume you're okay. They look at you like, oh, she looks so much better. So they don't check in with you. They don't send you that text. They don't bring it up. And it's possible people don't want to bring it up to you because they want to give you space, or the weird thing I hear is, I don't want to remind them of their loss. Guys, nobody forgot. I haven't forgotten that my brother died. Okay? I promise you, people don't forget their losses. You're not going to remind them. In fact, I think it's beautiful when people ask me about my brother. It's been 10 years now. As of when this podcast airs, it'll be about a month out from the 10-year anniversary of my brother's death. I still love it when people ask me about him. You're not reminding me. You're not reopening a wound for me. It's a wound that's still there, but you're not affecting it by asking me. So we just don't have that we don't have people approaching us as much, and they don't see it in us because we're hiding it a little more. But just because we're maybe hiding it, or it's not as visible on us anymore, it doesn't go away. It's still there. And then there's the secondary losses, the stuff people don't often see or know about. Maybe the loss of your identity, your routine. I was talking about my caregiver support group. When a caregiver loses the person they're caring for, it's so much harder with that loss of identity, because a period of their life they were just caregiving, and that's who they were. They were the caregiver of whomever. And now that I'm not caregiving anymore, what is my identity? Who am I not a caregiver, and who am I without this person? There's all these secondary losses. Your routine in life, your role within the family, you're not you anymore. And that kind of grief, that's the sneaky one. That's the one that's harder to talk about, because sure, you can talk about losing your significant other and people understand that the grief that could come into play with not having that significant other, but not understanding the other griefs you're feeling about your loss of identity as part of a partnership. So I have clients say to me all the time, like, I don't know, it seems like everybody else seems okay with this. Why am I still here? Let me say this out loud. Let me say this real loud I'm not going to say it real loud. Don't turn your volume down, but you're not stuck. You're not crazy. You're grieving. Okay? So let's talk about the void. Ooh, I should put a special effect on that. Okay. Let's talk about the void. So it can often feel like when you're in this time that you're screaming into the void or the universe, and you're not getting anything back. Your friends and family are laughing and having a good time and doing their thing. Your coworkers are back to stressing about their deadlines. Even the dog seems to be adjusted, but you're still here aching. And that loneliness is so disorienting. So yes, you've lost that person or that thing, but now you're losing the way that you were treated while you were grieving. So people stop reaching out, they stop talking. Again, they might not know what to say, they might be afraid they're reminding you, but they also might just kind of suck at this, because we all do, because these are the things we're not talking about as a society. We're not talking about the secondary losses. So let's talk about what you can do while you feel in that stuck place. Well, first of all, you can reach out to me. This is what I specialize in. This is, as a grief coach, this is what I do, is I help people feel unstuck when they're in this moment, when they're still grieving so hard, but they're noticing others aren't, and they're feeling weird about it. Reach out to me or someone like me, or talk to somebody else, right? Find your grief people. Is there a support group you can go to? An online community? I found a lot of support in the Sounds of Sibling group on Facebook, which is a spinoff from Compassionate Friends for people who lost siblings. Because I was so confused with my grief, because sibling grief isn't one we talk about very often either. I did an episode on it early on in my show, but it's another one of those like disenfranchised type griefs. And so hearing from other people who lost siblings who kind of felt what I was feeling was really good. It felt good to me. So find your grief people. Talk to somebody who really gets it. I want you to talk back to that shame. When that shame starts sneaking in that's telling you should be over this by now, I want you to look at that. I want you to look at that shame, even though it's invisible. Pick a point on the wall and make that your shame. Be like, hey, why are you telling me that? Why do you think I should be over this? Maybe I'm not, and maybe that's okay. Just look at that shame as objectively as you can and recognize it for what it is. It's you're feeling shame, and you don't need to. Another great mechanism is I just taught my course on journaling through grief live and in person the other day. It was amazing. Journaling is a great way to help with that. I have online, if you go to my website, in my store, there's a link down there. You can purchase my course on journaling through grief and learn all about some great tactics on working through your grief with journaling. But you can create rituals too. Light a candle, write letters to your person, write letters to yourself as if it were that person writing back to you. Look at photos. Do whatever helps you feel connected to that person without feeling overwhelmed. Find your safe space. Some people can't look at photos, and that's okay. I'm kind of that person that brings up too much, a little too much that I can handle in one point. So find something you can handle. Okay? But don't be afraid to say it out loud. I'm still grieving, and that's okay. Sometimes just claiming it, owning it, is the most powerful thing you can do for yourself. Okay, so let's talk about rebuilding our connections. So when you start noticing people are not as there for you as they were shortly after your loss, it can be really easy to pull away from them and to sink into that isolation. And sometimes people don't think about it because it wasn't their loss. Sometimes people feel weird about other people's griefs. It makes them uncomfortable. So they kind of just withdraw from you. But for whatever reason, they're just not as there. And that's a relationship you're not feeling as strong in. You've kind of lost this to your grief. You can still find ways to connect with those people. And it might take effort on your behalf to reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm still here. Yes, I'm still grieving, but I'd still like to go on our weekly coffee date. Or try gently educating people around you. Share this podcast episode with them. And I'm not just saying that to get more listens, because I don't get ad revenue or anything, but seriously, or another podcast or an article you read about this type of grief, send it to them. It's just kind of, share some information you have about grief with them. If you think they'd be receptive to it, if you think they're going to brush you off or kind of snip at you, maybe don't. But if somebody does reach out and they say, how you doing today? Try being honest with them. And if you think this is somebody that can, quote unquote, handle that, tell them, you know what, today I'm not doing so great. It's kind of a rough day. Thank you so much for checking in. I'm glad to know that you're here and you care. Today's kind of a bad day. And, maybe wait there and see if you kind of get a sense if they're open and receptive to talking with you more about it. And then you've just made a beautiful connection with somebody who might be able to help you through some of this crappy time. So sometimes you might have to reach out to somebody else. And again, find your grief people. Find those people that get it. Okay? So here's the kind of the bottom line here. You're not broken. You're not wrong. You're not doing it wrong. You're not grieving incorrectly. You're not losing a race. You're not behind. You're just grieving. And that's okay. It absolutely makes perfect sense that you're feeling isolated. So if you're feeling that way, that makes sense and it's totally normal. The truth is, there are tons of other people feeling that exact same way. Every one of us on this planet, we're just doing the best we can to carry on with our lives because the world around us is always going to keep going. No matter what happens, the world's going to keep going wherever it goes. That's just how the world works. It keeps moving and eventually we'll jump back on that train again too. So if you're feeling stuck in that place, I promise you are not alone and you're okay. All right. So thank you for checking out this episode. So thank you for indulging me on this. This is a topic I've been meaning to do for quite some time now. So I'm glad I finally got around to talking about it a little bit. All right. Well, now that we're at the end of the episode, it is time for the Death Deck. Woo. Okay, so I'm actually pulling from the End of Life deck today. Shuffle these up and whoop. Okay. Oh boy. Oh, I'm feeling attacked. Being dependent on others. A is horrible. I want nothing to do with this for as long as possible. B is unavoidable. I don't like it, but I know I need the help. Or C allows for deeper connections and makes me feel loved. Oh, man. I hate to admit this to y'all, but I am so A. I do not like being dependent on other people. It's my biggest personality flaw, but my greatest strength is I'm probably one of the most independent people you will ever meet. And I just asked my husband. I had surgery a couple years ago, and oh gosh, that's 4 years ago at this point. And I was laid up for a couple days, and afterwards, it was just a couple days. It wasn't even anything major. It was outpatient surgery. But I was horrible to deal with because I wanted to do the things I do. And I kept trying to do things, and he had to keep forcing me to stop trying to go do the dishes and just sit on the couch. I stink at that stuff. I want to be able to just do stuff on my own. The thought of depending on somebody else to do things for me is just, it's hard for me. And that's something I know about myself, right? Something I'm going to have to work on because someday I will have to depend on other people. All right. That's all. I can't thank you guys enough for being part of this podcast journey. If you like this episode or if you like my show, please feel free. Please come check me out over on Patreon. You can get access to the podcast a week early and get grief affirmations right to your inbox and I post all sorts of content now throughout the week on Patreon. Some of it just free and open to the public, so you can follow me there and still get some content. You can get even more if you subscribe there. Come check out Caregivers United. There's great content there as well, and I have the support groups coming. You can find me on my website, nikkithedeathdoula.com. I'm no longer on the socials. I do have a Substack, though, so you can find me on Substack. I'm in a lot of places. I'm just not on the normal social medias anymore, so I'm still out there churning away stuff all day long. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you all. I hope you have an amazing week. And remember, as always, your grief is yours. Feelings are valid. Grief doesn't always have to suck. Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula is produced by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC in Columbus, Ohio. Nikki the Death Doula LLC is for consulting, education, emotional support, and guidance, and is no way considered a funeral establishment or licensed mental health establishment. Scripts, editing, sound design, literally everything with this podcast is done solely by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC, with the exception of the music. The music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. Licensing information can be found at filmmusic.io.